This is CBC Vancouver News.
I'm so scared.
A suspect is charged with murder and aggravated assault after two brutal attacks in downtown Vancouver. The calls to rethink public safety.
Overall, it's not that bad, considering.
Plus,
there's a number of independents that will be running for the first time. In fact, they are expecting record number of independents running.
BC United candidates not picked up by the BC Conservatives consider their political futures as voting day inches closer. Also,
this is something that is huge. It's going to allow a lot of more women to feel comfortable coming to job sites.
A big change on big BC job sites. Flush toilets will soon be mandatory. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Janella Hamilton. A portion of downtown Vancouver was shut down for hours tonight as police investigated a suspicious package left outside the Post building at the corner of Homer Street and West Georgia Street. Vancouver police say the emergency response team was called in to safely detonate the package, which had the word "look" written on the outside of the box. As a precaution, the roads around the building were closed. They have since reopened. No word yet on what was inside the package. A man has now been charged in two violent attacks in downtown Vancouver yesterday, one of which left a 70-year-old man dead. We're also learning about the suspect and that he had a history of mental health-related incidents. And as Susanna De Silva explains, that's raising questions about public safety.
One day after a deadly, random attack, many in Vancouver are still on edge.
It's a little bit shocking, but also not that shocking, considering perhaps some of the incidents and in the downtown area.
Really terrified, really unscared to go out.
A suspect is accused of severing a man's hand before killing another man, now identified as 7-year-old Francis David Laporte 10 minutes later. 34-year-old Brendan Colin McBride, now charged, facing 1 count of second-degree murder and 1 count of aggravated assault. A search of his criminal record shows 2 other assault charges, as well as a charge of assaulting a police officer. He received a conditional discharge for the most recent conviction and 18 months probation in April.
The guy's, doing kind of some weird stuff with his head, making some weird comments.
Matt Henry was walking with his pregnant wife in the area McBride was arrested.
I think it was the one shoulder. It looked like there was either some maybe some red marks or some blood, like something was there. But we didn't expect this guy to have just, potentially stabbed somebody and hurt somebody.
Police have said McBride has a lengthy history of mental health-related incidents, an issue the province has struggled to deal with for decades, says this expert.
We're increasingly relying on our courts and corrections system to respond to problems associated with mental illness, including addictions.
Police have confirmed the surviving victim underwent surgery and had his hand reattached. As for McBride, he's due back in court September 18th. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
A game of political musical chairs continues to play out across BC, with some of those unable to secure a chair deciding they're not out of the game just yet. As Katie DeRosa reports, a growing number of former BC United candidates and even MLAs are deciding to run as independents.
In the United States, independence is a source of pride, a badge of honor. But when running for public office, being an independent is like standing in the political wilderness. Well, after BC United bowed out of the provincial election, we could see a large number of candidates without a party affiliation.
There's a number of independents that will be running for the first time. In fact, they are expecting record number of independents running, which could very well become the power brokers in a legislature that is looking like it might be a minority government.
Dan Davies, the BC United MLA for Peace River North, announced he'll be running as an independent. He joins MLAs Tom Shapitka and Mike Bernier, who already made that call. The BC Conservatives tapped 3 sitting MLAs and 4 former BC United candidates to join their slate. John Rustad's door is still open for a few more BC United crossovers, but the vast majority of BC United's 57 candidates will either have to run as independents or end their candidacy. At least 5 BC United candidates have decided to run independent, in addition to 2 BC Conservatives who were dropped from the team. That's Rachel Weber in Prince George Mackenzie and Dupinder Saran in Surrey Panorama. Lumbee Mayor Kevin Acton was the BC United candidate in Vernon Lumbee. He decided to go it alone because of his frustration at seeing BC Conservative candidate Dennis Giesbrecht moved into the riding. That was so the BC Conservatives could make way for BC United's Peter Millibar, who wanted to run in his riding of Kamloops Centre.
I'm not worried about vote splitting because, I mean, hey, let's be honest, who's vote splitting? I've been doing this since November. They shoot this guy in 46 days before an election, and then they start telling me that I'm vote splitting and sending me propaganda that independents never win. And
Norman Stowe is a longtime BC Liberal strategist who switched to the Conservatives in June. He says independent candidates could split the centre-right vote and hand victory to the NDP.
Just do the math. If you think you're going to run as an independent and you're simply going to split the vote, even if you are popular in your own riding, to me, when you do something like that, frankly, I think it's a bit selfish.
Former NDP MLA Adam Walker has been sitting as an independent since he was kicked out of the government caucus last year for misconduct allegations that have not been made public. Walker is encouraged by what he sees.
An independent MLA is there to represent the community first and not the party. And so it's very exciting to see folks like Mike Bernier and Tom Shapitka that have years of experience being leaders in their community, recognizing the importance of being independent and putting their name forward.
Some candidates have said the playing field is not entirely level for independent candidates. According to Elections BC, independent candidates do not receive the $1.75 per vote subsidy given to official political parties. Independent candidates also have to receive 10% of the vote in order to be reimbursed for some of their expenses. That's higher than the 5% vote threshold for party candidates. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
A long-demanded improvement to working conditions on BC construction sites will soon become a reality. Flush toilets will be required for large job sites across the province. As Liam Britton reports, it's being welcomed by unions and bosses.
I'm here at the UA Piping Industry College on Annacis Island. It's a school for plumbers and other tradespeople, and here they know a thing or two about waterworks.
And starting next month, workers across other trades will know plumbing a little more. That's because as of October 1st, BC job sites with 25 or more workers will need to have flushable toilets and running water, not the porta-potty bathrooms you see today. For this electrician, it's a matter of equity.
This is something that is huge. It's going to allow a lot of more women to feel comfortable coming to job sites, feel comfortable being able to go to the washroom in dignity, clean themselves up, wash their hands, and go back to work.
BC Building Trades, which speaks for construction unions, says they've been pushing for this for years. The Premier promised it last year, and the CEO of Building Trades says workers need this now.
It is time that we had their back. They deserve our support. They deserve to be treated with utmost respect.
Burke's Group argues Quebec already has this policy, as does Australia's Victoria State, and it follows trends in other sectors like film and tourism, which are also doing away with porta potties. Several voices for construction employers say it's a change worth making to make their sector more attractive to workers, including women. One said rules need to be applied fairly with considerations for what stage a project is in.
There needs to be a sense of reasonableness. What is underway on one job site is way different than what we can plan for in a project that starts 6 weeks from now, where the expectations will be rolled out and simplified and consistent for everybody.
Labour Minister Harry Bains, who is not seeking re-election, says he's confident things will roll out smoothly. He says WorkSafe won't start fining workplaces on the 1st of October, for instance. Inspectors will instead inform bosses about their new obligations. And he believes the changes will save time and money in the long run.
There's a cost already for not having them. Workers are going, trying to find washing facilities, spending so much time.
The hope is this change will mean sanitation worries on the job will no longer be a drain on workers. Liam Britton, CBC News, Delta.
All sailings on BC Ferries Queen of New Westminster have now been cancelled through the end of September. BC Ferries says one of the ship's propellers fell off, leaking 800 litres of hydraulic oil.
This was light hydraulic oil, and so it's the kind of oil that actually evaporates very quickly from the water's surface. We had other vessels, our other ships that were sailing on the same route, and they weren't able to detect any kind of oil sheen left over. And so we're feeling pretty good that there's been really minimal impact.
He says the propeller has been located and they are now planning to recover it. The 60-year-old ship is set to be retired in the coming years when up to 7 new ferries enter operation in 2029. BC Ferries also says this summer is on track to be the busiest in the corporation's 64-year history, with more than 5 million passengers having traveled with them in June and July alone. More long-term care beds are coming to Surrey as a new project gets underway in Cloverdale. Guru Nanak Diversity Village will have 125 beds near 64th Avenue and 176th Street. It will be designed to support people living with dementia and have culturally sensitive care. It's set to cost $123 million, most of that paid for by the province. The health minister says while Surrey is BC's youngest community, that is changing.
Under the age of 19, population in Surrey here to 2038 is going to probably increase in the neighborhood of 20%, and the population over 80 is going to increase by more than 200%. We need more, better seniors care in our community.
The village is slated to open in 2026. The BC government says its current supply of COVID-19 vaccines will remain available until new ones are approved, unlike other provinces that say they're following a federal directive to destroy existing doses. CBC's Mike Crawley has the latest.
At this Toronto pharmacy, here's the fridge where the COVID-19 vaccines used to be.
The Public Health Agency of Canada has issued a market withdrawal.
When pharmacist Fadi Salama got this memo last week telling him to destroy his existing vaccine supply, he wondered if it might be a scam.
It was confusing enough for me to not take it seriously at first, and then I kind of read through it a little bit more and it seemed legitimate.
It was indeed legitimate from Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health. But with no new supply of COVID vaccine expected for weeks, it's left Salama puzzled.
Why would we get rid of something that is still good?
Ontario blames Health Canada. The federal agency wants the existing vaccine supply withdrawn before it will distribute an updated version targeting the newest strains of COVID.
I don't think that at the national or at the provincial levels, they're trying to create a vacuum. I think this is a harbinger that the updated formulation is going to come soon.
Health Canada says provinces are allowed to use last year's vaccines until the transition to the new shots, but there's clearly confusion. Alberta and Saskatchewan have joined Ontario in scrapping their existing stocks. British Columbia is keeping its supply available. Marie-André Lajoie plans to travel overseas next month. The appointment she'd booked for a COVID shot has now been cancelled.
I like to be vaccinated. I believe in that stuff. They want us to be vaccinated, and all of a sudden, poof, no more vaccines.
Lajoie will now go get her shot in the U.S. Regulators there have already approved updated versions of 3 COVID vaccines. Here in Canada, they're all still under review. Officials expect they'll become available to Canadians in late September or early October. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
To yield or stop? It's an age-old question for cyclists. Now a new study is advocating for changes to the law that favors one over the other. That story after the break. Well, if you're on a bike and come to a stop sign, do you stop or do you yield? Stop signs and cyclists in BC often have a conflicted relationship. A new study from a Pacific Northwest university is advocating for law changes, saying it's safe and efficient for cyclists to yield at stop signs rather than coming to a complete halt. Chad Pawson rolls into this one.
It's the law in BC for cyclists to stop at stop signs, just like every other vehicle, but out on the streets, not so much.
How do you treat a stop sign in Vancouver?
Like a yield sign, yeah. Unless there's a lot of traffic, and then I do stop.
It makes it a lot more efficient. I'm not going to come to a full stop. Like the amount of energy that takes to stop my entire bike and get it going again, it just doesn't make sense.
I think it's probably better to yield at a stop sign because we're just looking to see if they're safe to go first.
Maybe cyclists here are onto something with their bicycle rolling stops. Advocates say this is actually safer and preferred to coming to an outright stop, and a new study from Oregon State University is bolstering the argument.
Researchers there study the difference between coming to a complete stop at stop signs and having cyclists slow down, check for safety, and then proceed. They had drivers and cyclists interact through a virtual simulation and found with proper education for both cyclists and drivers, those on bikes preferred to yield rather than stop and went through intersections faster. Driving participants, meanwhile, approached intersections either more slowly or at a similar speed, meaning laws that let cyclists treat stop signs as yield signs lead neither riders nor motorists to act unsafely. The academics behind the research want it to be used by policy makers to give them information to support prospective legislative policies, set up educational programs, and enforce any new laws. It's something cycling advocates here are encouraged by. They've been pushing BC for this change for years and say the new study could help. Several states, including Washington, have rules which allow what's called the Idaho stop, named after the first state to put in the rule back in 1982.
I feel very positive that yes, we will see more changes in the future that will make cycling more desirable and safer.
The province says the safety of all road users is its top priority, and having all road users stop at stop signs ensures this. But it's not completely putting a stop to further study of the issue that could yield a change. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here we have a live shot of West Georgia Street, where police were earlier this evening due to a suspicious package. But as we can see, the road has now reopened. I'll have your full forecast after the break.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond. Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox. British Columbia is heading to the polls on October 19th. Keep informed with CBC News for in-depth analysis, interviews, and breaking news that can help you decide the province's future. Download and tune in with the free CBC News app and online at cbcnews.ca. For news you can trust, stay connected wherever you are with the CBC News app.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Darius Madavi joins us now with a look at our weather. Darius, it was quite a scorcher today. Is that sun going to be sticking around?
Oh, yes. And the humidity, Janella, is so sticky. It felt like I was back in Ontario. Today, we're feeling about 6 degrees warmer because of that humidity. On top of that extreme, definitely unseasonably high heat as a result of this ridge of high pressure. Tomorrow, probably going to feel even stickier, add another 8 degrees on top of the forecast. We'll talk about that in a minute. But especially in the valley tonight, the humidex value is going to be, not so pleasant even overnight. Even as we get into tomorrow, only going to rise further. Now, this ridge of high pressure is going to go away eventually as we get into middle of next week. Pretty much the entirety of BC it's moved off of. Places further west, we'll see that change a little bit earlier. Temperatures already dropping on the island as we get into tomorrow, into Saturday, into the weekend, not tomorrow. Janelle, as you know, it's our Friday because we're going to be in Penticton, where the weather's looking beautiful over the next few days. Parts of the island are going to get some cloud over the next few days, moving in at times, especially the North Island. But generally speaking, across the province for the next couple days, it is a very sunny forecast, unless you're up in the northwest. Then as we get into early next week, we start to see some more of that cloud build into the rest of the province. Most of that precipitation stays confined to the northern half of the province, but a bit may break a little bit further down, further south, especially on the island. But again, very dry and very sunny right through this weekend in the southern interior. And I'm very excited to be in Penticton, where it's going to be, well, similar to Kelowna, a little bit, maybe a degree or two cooler. Over the next couple days, easily into the 30s, very pleasant pretty much across BC. And really, that's going to be the case right through the weekend. So don't expect to see too much change until we get into next week. Now, in terms of conditions tomorrow, nothing but sunshine again across the entire southern half of the province. A little bit of moisture feeding into parts of the north coast, but other than that, pretty much dry everywhere. And if we take a look here in Vancouver, again, I want to highlight 8 degrees adding for the humidex tomorrow. Then the humidity starts to decline a little bit as the temperatures do as well. As we get into next week and see a bit of a shift, a bit more, slightly more fall-like weather.
I mean, it's a good thing we're headed to Penticton for a dragon boat competition. Hopefully that water will be a little bit of relief and a reminder to everyone to stay cool during these hot temperatures.
I can't wait to swim.
Scientists from the University of Victoria say their research has provided a unique first ever glimpse into the deep sea behaviors of the northern elephant seal. The lead author says the findings came by chance. The research was meant to study the effects of light and bait on fish, but a review of the cameras found some surprising visitors. At least 8 male elephant seals were repeatedly seen using sonar from Oceans Networks Canada, a deep sea research observatory off the BC coast, like a dinner bell as they hunted for prey.
It's amazing because, yeah, as I say, it's the first time that we can see, we can have a view underwater of what they're actually doing for us as scientific. Normally, you can have access to the data only using the tag. But having those videos and just watching at the behavior of them is just awesome.
The scientists say after the seals were done eating, they were caught power napping, a behavior not previously observed in the species. That is your late news for Thursday, September 5th. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For news on the go at any time, you can always head to our website at cbc.ca/BC. Hope you have a great night.